our contributor Varad Mehta wrote a piece on the crisis facing the federal courts. President Donald Trump celebrated a Supreme Court decision at the end of the term limiting nationwide injunctions by lower federal courts.
So thanks to this decision, we can now properly file to proceed with these numerous policies and those that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis, including birthright citizenship, ending sanctuary city funding, suspending refugee resettlement, freezing unnecessary funding, stopping federal taxpayers from paying for transgender surgeries, and numerous other priorities of the American people.
Attorney General Pam Bondi laid out what the stakes were when the Supreme Court ruled.
These injunctions have blocked our policies from tariffs to military readiness to immigration to foreign affairs, fraud, abuse, and many other issues. The judges have tried to seize the executive branch's power, and they cannot do that. To put this in perspective, 94 districts and 35 out of the 40 opinions with nationwide injunctions came from 5 liberal districts in this country. No longer.
Ever since President Trump returned to power, the lower federal courts, particularly in liberal jurisdictions, have been hamstringing his administration. They frequently have challenged his power to control the executive branch. They have contested him on major policy and constitutional questions like birthright citizenship. And Trump has found it very difficult compared to many of his predecessors based on these nationwide injunctions. Did the Supreme Court, under the leadership of Chief Justice John Roberts, solve the problem? Mehta is skeptical. Many lower courts are simply going to switch to class action suits to grant relief to people suing the Trump administration. In the case of the 14th Amendment birthright citizenship dispute, there was a class action suit, and a judge in New Hampshire granted class-wide injunction, which effectively, given that the people who are affected by this will be ruled a class, is going to be the same difference as a nationwide injunction. What is this going to potentially mean for the federal courts? Judicial review, while it's a reasonable inference from Article 3 of the Constitution, which lays out the power of the judicial branch, is not clearly and unambiguously enumerated, an enumerated power. However, since very early in our republic, with the Supreme Court decision of Marbury versus Madison, we have definitely followed the idea that the courts get to review the constitutionality of acts of the executive branch and the legislative branch. But since the legislative branch in recent decades has been much more deferential to the president when the White House and Congress are controlled by the same party, and much more deferential to the courts, a lot of oversight of the executive branch that once took place with Congress, congressional committees, votes of Congress, now a lot of that is being done by the judicial branch. And a problem with that is the judicial branch doesn't control the power of the purse, as does Congress, and it doesn't have the power of the sword. It doesn't have people with guns, as the executive branch does. So there are many who are concerned that an erosion of the judicial branch's credibility, as it is increasingly seen as an ideologically and politically motivated branch of government, will affect the entire design of separation of powers under our Constitution in a negative way.
And it seems hard to believe that judges want to try and stop us from looking for corruption, especially when we found hundreds of millions of dollars worth, much more than that, in just a short period of time. We want to weed out the corruption. And it seems hard to believe that a judge could say, we don't want you to do that. Well, so maybe we have to look at the judges, because that's a very serious, I think it's a very serious violation.
The Trump administration is definitely going to continue to be watching for unfavorable court rulings that they say unfairly impede their power to implement the agenda that they ran on in the 2024 campaign. As Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem warned ahead of the Supreme Court ruling.
And again, we've seen this across the country over and over and over again, where judges are getting political. It's not their job. I hope they can bring some dignity back to the bench, because we certainly are lacking it now for many of these federal judges.
This was certainly a running theme in the Biden administration as well, as the left tried to discredit a Supreme Court with a conservative majority, with key appointees nominated by President Trump, especially when Roe versus Wade was reversed, but also on Supreme Court decisions about presidential immunity concerning Trump during the lawfare campaign against him before the presidential election, and some Supreme Court rulings likely to be favorable to the Trump administration now that he's back in office. So the left has also begun criticizing the power of the judicial branch. Where will this end up? Comment down below and let us know.